The last of the Predators report cards are here. Today we got Ryan McDonagh and Jeremy Lauzon, two people who have an interesting future with the team now that Andrew Brunette's in charge. We'll talk about them today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you making us your first listen, and a special hello to all you loyal Locked On Pred heads out there. You know who you are, the everydayers who tune into us every single morning. We appreciate you tuning in and all the support you give us. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
All right. Full disclosure, we meant to have report cards wrapped up like 2 weeks ago.
Fair.
And then,
it's not our fault.
Changed their coach. So stuff, kind of came up.
That's right. Barry Trotz, it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
But also thank you, because you also gave us 2 weeks of great content.
Oh my goodness. And it's just beginning. Like, I am super excited to learn a little bit more about Andrew Brunette, to hear a little bit more from him. We've got development camp coming up. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this offseason with the Predators. It will not be boring, my friends.
Yeah. I don't know if you have heard this, Ann, but there's a draft in Nashville in 2 weeks.
I'm telling you. And here's what I was thinking about today. I was kind of thinking about, like, okay, people are talking about what's Barry Trotz going to do. Is he going to trade Saros? We're all talking about Saros trade talk. And if he does, what's he going to do? Is he going to move up in the draft? And I'm like, Barry Trotz has to keep in the back of his mind that at some point he will need a bathroom break. So he might not want to keep getting picks, because there is this whole table of Nashville Predators folks who have so many picks they will never get a chance to pee.
Yeah.
So be mindful of that, Nashville Predators folks. You're going to need a bathroom break.
I wonder if they just give up in like the 6th or 7th round and just be like, I don't know. Who's the best available from Finland? Go get that guy.
That's right.
Whatever his name is.
And it, you know what? It could turn out really, really well. Pecorine was an 8th round draft pick.
Yeah.
He didn't
in
end
a
up
round that
shabby.
doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. So
Carlos Scraston's the first ever Predators draft pick to play in an NHL game. 9th round.
Really?
Was the last pick on the Predators' very first draft, and he was the first Predators draft pick to play.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Bit of trivia for you there.
Yeah.
Lots of draft coverage coming up later this week.
Sure.
You and I are going to be talking with Eric Dene more in the coming weeks. He's got some guys the Preds can take at pick number 24. He's also going to tell us some late round sleepers, some guys that if you see their names pop up in 3rd, 4th, 5th round, whatever it is, you probably want to see the Predators reach for them. We've also had plenty of other stuff with Eric, including who he thinks the Predators should take with the number 15 pick, some good options there. So go back on our archives, our YouTube channel, or whatever podcast platform you use, and listen to some of his old draft coverage. But today, Ann, we've got report cards to talk about, and they're our last two. Thank God we made it. And it's two interesting players, Ryan McDonagh and Jeremy Lauzon. The defense for the Nashville Predators was trash last year. There's probably going to be some changes in the way Andrew Brunette wants to do things. So that leaves Ryan McDonagh and Jeremy Lauzon in an interesting place in this organization.
Yes, with so many potential changes underway, we have the privilege of doing a look back when we do report cards, but you can't talk about Ryan Patrick and Jeremy Lauzon without also having to have a little bit of a conversation about what is coming up for them. And a lot happened last season that may affect their future with the Nashville Predators and how they're used and what Andrew Brunette wants to do with them. So I think this is definitely a report card. It's a look back. It's a summary of their season, but we're also going to have to talk about like, what does next season potentially look like for Ryan McDonagh, for Jeremy Lauzon, and for this Nashville Predators defense, because a lot could happen that may affect what happens defensively moving forward. There's a lot of moving parts right now.
Agreed. Let's talk about Ryan McDonagh a little bit, because this was pretty much the big offseason acquisition for the Nashville Predators. They traded Philip Myers, who, didn't exactly work as a player, but because of his contract situation was actually a pretty big trade chip for a team like Tampa Bay that needed cap space. Ryan McDonagh was the guy that came in, had about $6.5 million a year, 3 years left on that deal. So this was a big commitment for the Nashville Predators. His first season, 2 goals, 18 assists for 20 points in 71 games. And what's your one word to describe Ryan McDonagh's first season with the Nashville Predators?
So I'm going to absolutely steal a word that John Cooper used to describe Ryan McDonagh, Ryan Patrick, as I like to call him, because, he's one of my faves.
Yeah, he's our guy.
He's our guy. So in the tribute video that the Tampa Bay Lightning did for Ryan McDonagh when he came back to Tampa Bay for the first time, there was a quote in there that head coach John Cooper said, and he referred to Ryan McDonagh as a stabilizer. And I absolutely think that nails Ryan Patrick, who he is as a player. But I also think there's an element of that we saw last season and that we are going to continue to need from Ryan McDonagh as the Predators move forward. This is a little bit of who he is. Part of that is his experience. This is a guy who, this is the first time he's ever missed the postseason. This is somebody who's been a captain for the Rangers. This is somebody who's won 2 Stanley Cups. Experience, age, that makes him sort of a stabilizing force. But I also think who he is as a player. This is not a Roman Josi guy. This is a guy who is more kind of boots on the ground, more defensively minded player. And I think for the Nashville Predators, in a lot of cases when he wasn't injured, he was a stabilizing force, not even just on the ice, but off the ice. I think big locker room guy. So for me, my one word is stabilizer. He just sort of kept a bat poop crazy Nashville Predators season. He was a force that kind of kept things a little bit stable for the Predators.
Yeah. It's funny because everybody, nowadays talks about like, the locker room guy sort of being an overrated role. And then you have a situation like you did this past season for the Nashville Predators, where pretty much all of your superstars get hurt. And then you have all of these new people coming in the lineup, guys making their NHL debuts, guys playing their first extended minutes consistently in the NHL. And Ryan McDonagh is kind of the guy that kept the glue together. Not just him, but guys like Colton Sissons, Tyson Barrie, who was a new guy, also came in and kind of was a stabilizing force. That's why everybody called him Mom. For me, my one word to describe Ryan McDonagh, and I know you're going to love this, Anne.
Okay.
Is Roy Kent.
Oh, come on.
Now, anybody who knows Ted Lasso knows what I'm talking about here. Roy Kent, season 1, he was this kind of distinguished, world soccer superstar who's in his, late 30s. Like, his best years are behind him. He knows he's retiring soon. He's a step behind everybody. He's getting beating and training. All the, people like coaches and stuff are talking about how slow he is. But what happens in the very last episode of season 1? He winds up just going out. Jamie Tart has a wide open net to shoot on. And here comes Roy Kent with just this amazing, kind of gritty defensive play. Winds up tearing his leg in half. Let's hope that doesn't happen to Ryan McDonagh. But that's kind of like the same thing. Like, Ryan McDonagh is not the Ryan McDonagh of, 6-7 years ago when he's scoring, 14 goals a year and topping 40 points for the New York Rangers, consistent, Norris buzz. He's not that guy anymore. He's taken a step back, but that doesn't mean he can't have value in a role to this team. And I think you saw that a lot last year where, he's not the puck carrying guy. If you try to get him to do that chase game against the other team's top lines, that's, I think, when his struggles came into play a little bit. But when you put him on the penalty kill,
come on,
that man can play some stay-at-home defense. When you're asking him to go and kind of win a puck battle in the corner, that guy can win a puck battle in the corner. So he's not the same guy. And it's interesting. We'll talk about this in a little bit, and maybe not, ideal fit for what Andrew Brunette wants to do, but that doesn't mean he can't be a good role player for the Nashville Predators. Somebody that can go out there and play really solid, mistake-free hockey for, 15 minutes a night on your bottom pair.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I love the Roy Kent analogy because he isn't the same player that he was, with the Rangers, and probably is not the same player that he was with Tampa Bay when he won the Cup. But the value that he brings, I think you can't underestimate it, especially off the ice. There is something to be said about having a guy who has done it, who has made it all the way and won the Stanley Cup, who knows exactly what it takes, especially as this team is looking to reset. We're going to be looking at a lot of younger faces, and to have a voice in that locker room who can say, this is what it's going to take to these young players who haven't been there, I think it's huge. And, on ice, very Roy Kent, not the same guy, but still value. Love the Roy Kent.
Maybe fewer F-bombs.
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
Ryan
McDonagh. Just in himself,
Yeah.
Interesting conversation on Ryan McDonagh because, what is his role going to be next year? And what does he think about his role next year and whether the Preds can get to the Stanley Cup? Plus, we also have thoughts on Jeremy Lauzon, another Preds blue liner, maybe somebody with a little bit of a different future here in Nashville. We'll talk about both in just 1 second. But first, want to mention today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Ryan McDonagh knows from his time in Tampa Bay that championship winning teams, it's all about making sure every player on that roster is a perfect fit. Well, it's the exact same way when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right to make that baby work. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. All you need to do is add your ride to the My Garage feature and look for the green check mark to know whether each part will fit. And if it doesn't, your money back. That's because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million different parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right price on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply. All right, Ann, we are talking about Ryan Patrick McDonagh, as you have coined him.
Yes. Well, his mom did, actually. I just looked it up. But
yeah.
RPM.
But I think people were just content with calling him Ryan McDonagh until you started this, the Ryan Patrick phase.
Yeah.
What do you make of maybe his role on this team moving forward? Now that we have established he's maybe not the player we thought he would be, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have value.
Yeah, I do think that he's really important. So much about the Nashville Predators moving forward, people are talking about these young players. We're talking about Luke Evangelista. We're talking about what's Cody Glass going to do in this next season. We're talking about, will we see Joachim Kimmel? But I think you have to remember how valuable players like Tyson Barrie, like Ryan Patrick are going to be to this team, because this is not a rebuild. if you ask Barry Trotz, the timeline is not so long that they're really starting from the ground up. And I think when you look at a player like Ryan McDonagh, again, who has been there, who has done it, who has won it, I think his value is going to be high. I would say his value probably off ice may be more important than on ice. I also think you really have to find the right defensive partner for Ryan McDonagh. I think
I agree with that.
We saw in the beginning of the season, the Ekholm McDonagh kind of dream didn't really materialize like at all, y'all. And I think you have to find the right partner for Ryan McDonagh. I think you've got somebody who is a really good defenseman, a good stay-at-home defenseman. So give him a partner who maybe wants to get a little bit more mixed into the offense when you've got a guy like Ryan McDonagh who could be more defensively solid. So I think there's a good opportunity for him, but you have got to find the right pair. Like, you've got to find the right guy, because Ryan McDonagh could do so much for the right defensive partner.
Yeah, and the good, we had Roman Josi as his defensive partner for a while last year, and that helped Josi. That kind of stabilized that top pair. But at the same time, we're Andrew Brunette's going to this new puck possession based,
right,
very fast up and down the ice. If that top line loses the puck, you expect your guys to go out there, stick with them, skate, and challenge them. And it's not unfair to question that might not be the best kind of fit for Ryan McDonagh anymore. So, who is going to be the right fit? There's three guys. There's three right-handed shots now: Tyson Barrie, Alexander Carey, and Dante Fabro, assuming one of those three don't get moved, which who knows what's going to happen at this point and this summer. But, Ryan McDonagh, I think, maybe a guy like Jeremy Lauzon, who we're going to talk about here in a second, on the bottom pair, maybe that's kind of like a good stabilizing force.
Yeah, and I think there's a role for Ryan McDonagh. I definitely think there's a role for him. I do think what happens with Juuse Saros changes so much about the defensive roles, because if the Predators and the rumor mill is swirling about will Trotz trade Juuse Saros, will he not? And I think if you lose a goaltender like Saros, who keeps you in games, who makes saves that are just ridiculous, who gives the team a chance to win, if you kind of step away from that, it really changes what you need from your defense. And that's if Saros were to be traded, this is where I think Ryan McDonagh is going to be more important. He is not going to be a speed guy. I agree with you. You talk about Andrew Brunette, like, if we lose the puck, we're going to go and we're going to get it back right away. McDonough's not necessarily the speed guy, but in front of the net, this is a good, solid defenseman. And I think his role, depending on what happens with goaltending, could really change next season.
They might need it to if Juuse Saros is sitting in that net.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to need somebody to kind of park the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to tell because, ideally you would want to maybe as kind of like an auxiliary player, like, what Mark Stahl is for the Florida Panthers right now, a guy that doesn't play a lot of minutes, but when he does, kind of reliable. Like, that's, sort of the not trying to make him do too much role.
Right.
I think the question is, do the Predators have enough talent in the rest of their defensive core to sort of make him be that guy? Or do they look at this and be like, yeah, okay, we're still going to need to rely on Ryan McDonagh as one as like our top four guys?
Yeah, and I think the defense really becomes a big question. You look at the offense, you hear what Andrew Brunette wants to do, wants to get faster. Barry Trotz has said, we got to get faster. We got to kind of change the way we play. And so you focus on, what does that look like for all of these offensive players? What do we need from Philip Forsberg? What do we need from Luke Evangelista? What do we need from, all these forwards? But you also have to look at, what do we need from the defense if you make kind of these adjustments in how you play the game? And then it really comes down to, you're looking at every single defenseman and saying, okay, what do we need from you? And can you bring that to the ice consistently? Love Ryan McDonagh in front of the net. Love him on special teams. He is great at shot blocking. I hate the fact that he hurt himself doing that this season. So, a lot. So there's a lot of value to Ryan McDonagh in front of the net, but you have to look big picture at what's going to happen with this defense next season. And I think there are a ton of questions about the defense. Ton of questions. Do the Nashville Predators actually have what they need?
Yeah. Interesting conversation. You mentioned Ryan McDonagh has obviously been on a lot of championship teams. He's been to the Stanley Cup final before. He knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup, and he's in Nashville now. So at the end of the season, you asked him just what's kind of the what do you think of this locker room compared to the ones you had in New York and Tampa? Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts, like you talked about. A lot of players shuffling around, a lot of different guys, opportunities, management. Obviously, big change at the top with Poyle and Trotz. But at the end of the day, I think we understand what our goal is here is to try to bring the Stanley Cup, and I don't think we should lose sight of that focus. It's easier said than done, but I think the guys understand that there's a lot of work that you've got to put in, and I think guys that are willing to do that, kind of look themselves in the mirror individually, look at ourselves at a team, and all the little things that you can do to try and improve your chances there, but really just setting ourselves up for a more successful year next year.
I love this comment by Ryan McDonagh because so much about where the Predators are heading, and this was before we had a new head coach, but you think about individual players, what is Cody Glass going to do with his game this year? What are we going to see from a healthy Philip Forsberg, a healthy Roman Josi? Will Ryan Johansson be back? And you look at these individual pieces, but I love that Ryan McDonagh comes back to this point of you also have to look at collectively as a team. What do we need to do collectively to get that Stanley Cup? And here's the thing. This Nashville Predators team is in a reset. I think that expectations are pretty clear. The Predators may or may not make the postseason next year. We're not looking to make probably a deep cup run next season. But Ryan McDonagh understands that's the goal. That's where your eyes have to be. And yes, you're in a reset. And yes, you're trying to figure out where individual pieces fit. But in the end, this team has to keep their eye on getting to the Stanley Cup finals. And I like that Ryan McDonagh has that perspective. I think it's very helpful for a team that's kind of resetting, kind of refiguring out how they're going to go about getting better. And his thing is, we're not going to just get better. The goal is get to the Stanley Cup. And I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a guy that would know what that takes. And let's move on to another Predators member, that blue line, Jeremy Lauzon. This is a guy that I don't think a lot of Predators fans exactly know what to make of yet. Of course, when he was brought over from Seattle at the trade deadline a year ago, the Preds gave up a second-round pick. A lot of people thought, that seems like too much for a guy like Jeremy Lauzon. Then the Predators re-signed him to a 4-year contract, and Predators fans once again said, that seems like too much for Jeremy Lauzon. It's clear that the Predators really value this guy, or at least see something moving forward. And hey, to his credit, 12 points this year, which is a career high.
Yeah.
Let's not look at the rest of his stats. But, let's start with this. One word to describe Jeremy Lauzon's season.
So my one word is a throwback to my early mom days when my son Jude was a toddler. And sometimes if you would ask him a question and he wasn't really sure of the answer, his reply would be, could be. It could be. And so it's just a little bit of the Kimmel lingo we still use. And for me, Jeremy Lauzon is a could be. He could be an important piece for the Nashville Predators moving forward. This could be a guy who is a solid depth defense piece for the Nashville Predators. Or it could be that maybe the Predators are going to be paying Jeremy Lauzon and wishing maybe they had an opportunity for some other defensemen to step up. And you look at players like, I go back to Spencer Stastny. I know we only saw him for 8 games, not saying that he's necessarily ready for a full-time NHL gig, but if you are investing in players for the future, like Jeremy Lauzon, is he going to do enough that you're going to say, hey, you know what, he's the guy we're going to go with, and we're not going to invest in somebody like Spencer Stastny in ice time? Could be. I don't know.
there's a lot to break down when it comes to his game there.
Yeah.
To me, and my one word to describe Jeremy Lauzon is 2009 Ford Taurus.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not sure if those exist anymore. But you know, if you're driving around with a 2009 Ford Taurus, you get what you pay for, which is you're driving around. It gets you to point A to point B. It does the job a car needs to do. When you start taking that 2009 Ford Taurus on cross-country road trips, when you're trying to just speed down the interstate at 90 miles per hour, you're pushing a little bit.
Yeah.
And that seems to be Jeremy Lauzon's game. When you just need him to go out there and play defense, like, just don't make any mistakes in your own zone, keep the other team from scoring, be responsible in front of your net. Jeremy Lauzon, pretty good defenseman, not bad. When he starts trying to do too much, when you're asking him to push the puck a little bit, when you're asking him to go out and step up and kind of, force play, that's kind of when Jeremy Lauzon struggles a little bit.
Yeah.
And do you remember, I can't remember what game this was, maybe against St. Louis, where Jeremy Lauzon had just a really bad game.
I remember him having
really bad game. Like, I think one puck like bounced off him and into the net. I think the other one was a turnover, like right him straight to whoever scored the goal or set up the goal. And there's another one where he just was way out of position on a play. And, a rough game. And I think everybody was, they asked John Hines about it afterward. Everybody was like, oh, yeah, you expect your coach to be like, oh, yeah, everybody has those bad games. No, what did John Hines say? Yeah, that's because he tried to do too much when he should have done this. Like, just threw him right under the bus. And that kind of seems to be the Preds' strategy for Lauzon a little bit is, no. We know you want to be the guy that goes out there and is Roman Josi 2.0, but if you do that, you're going to suck. So please just do what we're paying you for the next 4 years to do, which is stay in your own zone, man the blue line, and please don't screw up.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's interesting because you see him really wanting to do more, and yet it doesn't always go well. And so it's like, okay, do you give him a little leash to kind of develop that? Or do we just say, hey, buddy, like, here's what we need from you. No more, no less. Here's what we need from you. And again, I go back to, this defense is going to be a big topic of conversation, especially when it comes to what's going to happen with Juuse Saros, because you take Juuse Saros out of the net and Kevin Lankinen, if Kevin Lankinen, if this is all a big fat if, y'all, but if they do trade Saros and you have Kevin Lankinen in net, Kevin Lankinen is a solid goaltender, but he's not going to cover your backside nearly as much as Saros does. And so what you're going to need from your defense is going to be very, very different. It's going to be a lot more stay at home, do your job, be responsible. And you've got to make sure you've got guys that will do that. So the defense, I will tell you, as much as we get excited about looking ahead to this offense and this new offensive scheme, and we're going to be faster and we're going to, control the puck, and we've got these exciting young offensive players, the defense for me, for the Nashville Predators, is going to be the thing to watch, especially if something horrible were to happen with Juuse Saros. And it would be horrible.
Like,
I want to be clear.
Being traded. He's not going to die.
He's not going to die.
Get traded.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hit on something, Ann. You said that, we've seen Jeremy Lauzon want to kind of be that guy, that guy that pushes play a little bit, that guy that jumps into the offensive zone, maybe takes some chances. Do you see Andrew Brunette maybe letting him do that next year? And if so, under this system where maybe he is going to get a little bit more freedom, do you see that as maybe him kind of stepping up and being that really solid depth defenseman? Or do you kind of see him going into some of these habits this past year?
I think it could go either way, and that's frustrating because I think you're right. If he's given a little bit more leash by Andrew Brunette to like be more involved in the play, be a little bit more aggressive, kind of get in the mix. Hey, you know what? That could pay off. The problem is if it doesn't pay off, it will really hurt the Nashville Predators. So it's a cost benefit ratio. And to be honest, I don't know if we've seen enough from Jeremy Lauzon to know which way that's going to go.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing, I think Andrew Brunette's going to give him a chance to do that, chance to play in a system. And I think maybe at the end of this year, we could probably see, maybe a little bit more about what Jeremy Lauzon can become.
Yes. Yeah. I think this next season is going to be really interesting for players like Jeremy Lauzon and for players like Ryan McDonagh.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think. Either tweet us at LO_Predators, or we're also on Facebook now. So search Locked On Predators on Facebook and find us. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think of Jeremy Lauzon and Ryan McDonagh's season and what grade you would give them and why. We would love to hear from you. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at Penalty Box Radio or follow me on Twitter at _NS Morgan. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Remember to subscribe on whatever platform you're looking at, and we will be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.